The emotional entanglement between Lyra and the brothers Marius and Caspian reaches new heights, but when Lyra asks for Marius's knot, their shared past suddenly stands in the way. Can she overcome her inner turmoil to accept the deepest connection with Marius? And what will Caspian's return mean for this complex relationship? Join us on this adventure to witness how Lyra finds love and truth among the brothers. Subscribe to our channel to not miss a single heartbeat. 59. Marius. I wasn't happy taking Lyra with us, but at the same time, she was right, it'd be hard for us to stay apart, especially because of our wolves. We weren't wholly bonded yet to feel secure being away for more than a day. It'd be the most torturous couple of days for us if we were to go without her. Caspian was also wary about her condition but was somewhat pleased to know that she'd be present with us. It wasn't what I wanted, but this was what we needed to do to keep the bond satisfied. With each day that passed, I craved more and more for her to the point that it hurt. Each day my knot threatened to burst, unhappy for not being buried deep in her cunt, rutting again and again until my balls were empty and my seed flooded her womb. The mate bond urged me every day to mark her, to sink my teeth into her flesh and forever bind her soul to mine. I knew Caspian felt the same urgency but hadn't had the same troubled relationship with her from the start. I glanced at Lyra sitting in the backseat of our car while Caspian and I sat in front. Caspian was the one who drove so I could check updates from the Draken's side. So far they hadn't acted on anything yet. What is in those servers? I asked Lyra, wanting to know more. How much did you keep there? Everything, she replied. Do you have more servers elsewhere? I asked. Caspian was listening intently to us. Yes, but I stored my most important things on this one. Especially everything regarding you too, she returned with a suggestive tone. I narrowed my eyes at her in the rearview mirror. I want details, Lyra, I demanded. She pouted, but she knew she didn't have any other choice but to tell us everything. Or else I was going to tease it out of her by playing with her cunt and denying her a release until she told me everything. A part of me wished she'd do that so I could play out the whole scenario with her, to have her begging me. It made my cock twitch in my pants. Where shall I start? She purred teasingly, and I felt Caspian grow tense beside me. I wish I were sitting with her so I could touch her, to teach her that playing with us wasn't going to get her anything but our knots. And she'd have accepted that. I fought a groan. I needed to think straight. You promised to tell us, Lyra, I pressed. You can imagine what happens if it's anything sensitive and the Drakens got their hands on it. A pensive silence followed my question. I didn't have anything that'd make the Drakens suspicious of you too, but you know those packs on the edge of the land, the ones under the control of that mad alpha. His stuff scares me, she said, her voice wavering. Are you talking about Rickard of the Snow Court? I asked, nervous about her answer. Yes, that one, she sighed deeply. I have much information on him. Working on him occupied most of my time. What has he been up to? I asked, not feeling optimistic about the answer to the question. No one has heard from him or his wolves for a long time. That's because he's busy raising a naval fleet, so he could cross the frozen waters and enter the Arctic, Lyra hissed. Why the fuck would he want to do that? Caspian asked, horrified. I felt somewhat the same. Rickard had always been the most unpredictable alpha, making it hard to have any pact with him. It was one of the reasons why he wasn't invited to the Alpha's meet, held every year in the deserts of Klaus. We forged pact ties there to stay strong and relevant in geopolitical affairs. That madman was banned from Klaus after he killed 3 alphas the first time he was invited. He has to live up to his name, I said. It might come as a shock to you too that he isn't as mad as people think him to be, Lyra spoke. At least that's what I realized after keeping an eye on him for years. Who the fuck in their right mind would want to cross the frozen waters and enter the Arctic? It's the land of the Drakens. Caspian questioned, echoing my thoughts. Whatever Rickard was up to, it was extremely stupid and dangerous. Not only was he putting his pack in danger, he was dragging every one of us into a war we didn't want to fight. However, Lyra laughed at our questions as if we were the foolish ones. Again, I should have sat beside her. That'd have eased the tension in my body. If I were to tell you, you'd drop everything immediately and start raising a naval fleet yourself. She shot. What is it? I asked. What's so fucking important that it's worth putting everyone in danger? You want to know? Lyra asked, her voice dark and heavy all of a sudden. Tell us, I urged. Have you ever heard those old tales of the Madradar Drakens? She asked. Those ancient creatures that used to wreak havoc, you mean those mythical creatures? Caspian asked. Oh no, they were not mythical. They were real, Lyra replied, her tone dark and tense. They existed in those ancient times along with the gods. The current Drakons are the descendants of gods and those fierce creatures. Who told you that? I asked, intrigued, but at the same time I wouldn't say I liked where this was going. The witches of Weddard, she said. You're friends with all sorts of creatures, Caspian commented, and she chuckled. I know the witches. They are strange women, but they're worth having on your side. Anyway, back to the Madradar Drakons. They were all powerful. So much so that they defeated gods as well. You know what made them powerful? She asked. No, Caspian and I answered at the same time. You don't know, nor do the rest of the alphas. But guess who knows? She asked. Rickard, I answered. And he knows where and how to get it. 60. Caspian, what is it? I asked. It's snow dust, Lyra answered. Also known as frosterium. Said to give one superpower. The Drakons snort it to survive in the Arctic. At least, this is what I figured out after intercepting Rickard's messages with the Weddard witches. Damn, he really is up to something if he's working with the witches, I couldn't help but comment. I knew little about the Weddard witches, and most of those things weren't good. The Weddards love him, Lyra chuckled. As I said, Rickard isn't as mad as he seems. He works differently than the rest. Just because he lives on the edge of the land doesn't mean he's disconnected. No. It helps him avoid the noise and do his own thing without interference. He has changed Wintercourt ever since he overthrew his father and declared himself the Alpha. You speak too fondly of him, Marius noted. All I'm saying is that everyone has undermined him so far, and he's taking full advantage of it, Lyra shrugged. But how can we be sure that the thing about snow dust is true? Marius questioned. Could all be made up, Marius was right. All this could be made up to throw off anyone snooping around, but Lyra chuckled in the back seat. As I said, I know the Weddards. I've worked for them a couple of times, she replied. Do you have anything on them? I asked, hopeful. She had snooped into everyone's businesses. I hoped Lyra had something on them as well. No. I'd never snoop on a witch, especially a Weddard, Lyra replied, shaking her head. It's not worth it, but you snooped this one time to know about the snow dust. I questioned. I found it while snooping around Rickard's data. I was surprised to find his communication with them, especially the frequentness. Lyra spoke, lost in her thoughts. What's his actual plan? What's after he sails with his navy to the Arctic? Is he ready to fight the Drakons there? Marius asked. He'd be burned to crisp even before he steps foot on their land. The snow dust can be mined from a couple of places in the Arctic. The first place lies in the Drakons' territory. That's not where he's going. He's going to the place at the Arctic's edge, almost close to the boundaries agreed in the treaty. However, the source is under an iceberg, she said, deep in her thoughts. I exchanged a look with Marius to ensure he thought the same thing. The rest of the journey was quiet. Lyra dozed in the back seat while Marius took the wheel. It was almost getting dark, but we were close to the place Lyra had told us about. We stopped only a couple of times at a gas station and a roadside diner to eat before hitting the road again without wasting any second. It's been a long time since I've been here, she whispered in the back seat when we entered the hilly region of Vestbroek, staring out of the windows. We drove uphill for half an hour before stopping in front of an abandoned manor. The building had never been renovated and almost looked haunted. Its vintage design added to its dark aura. Lyra got out of the car before we could. Matt gave out a threatening growl, but I quickly followed her while Matt parked the car. It was completely dark by now and there was no light around. However, we could see in the dark. I walked through the overgrown grass in the front of the house. A cobblestone path had been there, but it was under a thick layer of mud and overgrowth. When I stepped on the porch, I found Lyra standing in front of the door, frozen like a statue. Lyra, I called for her, touching her shoulder. She shuddered and turned around, her eyes wide with horror. Something is wrong, she whispered, terror laced in her voice. My breath hitched. I heard Marius freeze on the porch stairs behind me. I grabbed her by the waist and took her off the porch without thinking. This had happened before, and we wouldn't repeat this mistake. Marius immediately started rounding the house to ensure we weren't walking into a trap like last time. It's not going to blow up, Lyra protested, but I wouldn't listen to her. Her safety was our utmost priority. We weren't going to mess it up this time. She made a noise of protest when I hauled her back to the car. My defense system is still active, she tried to convince me, but I saw signs on the door. Someone had tried to open it, doesn't matter. Matt will be checking the place first, I told her firmly. She narrowed her eyes at me. Wouldn't you go help your brother? She asked, crossing her arms on her chest. Someone needs to keep an eye on you all time, pussycat, I smirked, knowing her well. She glared at me, stirring my wolf. I wanted to grab and kiss her fiercely, but Matt gave us the clearance to return there. I couldn't help myself, so I swept her in my arms and gave her a short, fiery peck that had her huffing. That was terrible, she complained. So terrible I could smell the hints of your arousal. I chuckled, earning a murderous glare from her, but I felt her wolf lingering beneath the surface, excited and ready to play with me. I also wanted to play with her, but that'd have to wait. Matt was waiting on the porch when we went back. He gave us a lingering look, scenting her, and I flashed him a smile. Lyra pushed out of my arms and unlocked the door by typing the password on a screen hidden behind a rotting wooden panel on the wall. The door opened with a hiss instead of a rusty groan that I had been expecting from the looks of it. But before she could step inside, Matt entered the house and scanned the insides. Lyra sighed deeply while I held her arm in case she was planning to bolt inside and put herself in any danger awaiting us inside. When my brother gave clearance, I took her inside, never letting go of her arm. The servers are in the basement, she said. That way, she pointed to the left hall. We walked there, Marius taking the lead and looking around for danger. Meanwhile, I kept our back clear and kept a hold on Lyra. Lyra stopped abruptly by a broom closet and opened it. I stepped beside her, ready to put myself before her in case anything exploded. Lyra made an annoyed noise, but I ignored her. These are the defense system monitors, she said, shoving me aside. A red laser scanned her, and an alarm rang somewhere. What the fuck? She frowned. What was that? I asked her. A screen lit up in the darkness, showing only 2 horizontal lines. Fuck, no, Lyra panicked, punching buttons and tapping the screen again and again. However, the horizontal lines never left the screen. Caspian. Matt called out for me from somewhere in the house. Lyra was still occupied with the computer, cursing under her breath. Come see this. Are you in the basement? I asked. Lyra punched the computer with her cybernetic arm, but nothing happened. It had been corrupted to the point that nothing worked. Yes, take the door on the left past the stairs, he called out. Lyra abandoned the computer, and we headed towards the basement door. This time I let Lyra walk ahead. Meanwhile, I always checked our back in case anyone was upstairs and wanted to surprise us. I found Marius at the bottom of the stairs in the basement. He went upstairs to keep guard while I turned to see an empty basement. Lyra stood in the center, clutching her hair. 61. Lyra. I stood in the middle of the empty basement where I had once stored all my important servers. All gone. There was nothing left at all. Everything had been taken, and the defense system had been corrupted. Even though I stood in that ghostly empty space, I still found it hard to believe that my servers were gone, that someone had dared to come here, somehow corrupt my defense system, and take my servers where I stored years of my work. All fucking gone. Lyra, Caspian said behind me, but I couldn't hear him. His voice was distorted as if I was underwater. Instead, I was in my head, descending somewhere darker. This felt like a nightmare. One that had just begun. Lyra, he called out for me again. His voice was closer this time but felt more distorted than ever. All I could see was the space in front of me that seemed to be growing bigger and bigger. The walls pushing away until they couldn't be seen anymore. Until it felt like I was in a void. Everything gone. I opened my eyes and sat up. I didn't know where I was and how I got there. Everything was unfamiliar around me. It all felt like a fever dream I wanted to end badly. I rubbed my irritated eyes, groaning in myself, and just in time, an arm reached out to wrap around my waist and drag me to the other side of the bed. Hey, Marius's gruff voice greeted me, and soon, I found myself in his arms, feeling all the more lost. I blinked at him groggily, trying to remember what had happened. How are you feeling now? He asked. What happened to me? I asked him back. He searched my face pensively for a few moments. I noticed that we were in a dimly lit hotel room of sorts. It had to be a hotel room because none of the rooms in the brothers' house looked like this. Where's Caspian? I asked, pushing out of his arms and looking around. I was starting to remember going somewhere with the two brothers. However, apart from that, everything in my head was still pretty much blank. I groaned to myself. He has gone out to get some of our meds. Are you alright? Does anything hurt? Marius asked, sitting up and nearing closer to look at me properly. He looked more awake by every second. Nothing hurts, but why can't I remember anything? I frowned. He wrapped his arms around me and pulled me in his lap. I settled into his lap, feeling better than before but still lost. You hyperventilated and passed out, he answered tensely, checking my pulse. Why did that happen? I questioned him. I don't want that to repeat, he told me sharply. You must rest now. We had a long journey the whole day. We'll deal with everything tomorrow, he spoke, pulling me under the covers again and cradling me against him. I sighed, loving his warmth and caresses, but didn't feel like sleeping. Instead, I felt well rested than ever. I don't want to sleep, I said, facing him. He lay on his side, our legs tangled, and his arm heavily draped over me, making me feel very secure. Can we go out? Where are we? What time is it? We're away from the pack. It's late in the evening, and the weather's not nice to go out, Marius answered with the same gruffness that made me pout. However, I sensed the dismissive tone in his voice. He didn't want to let me know for whatever reason, which slightly annoyed me. These brothers kept too many secrets. Then what are we going to do in this hotel room? I asked, running my hand down his front, and he tensed under my touch. I smiled, my head filling with all kinds of ideas. What do you want to do? Marius choked, widening my smile. His eyes darkened as if he could read my filthy thoughts. I remembered thinking about this before our journey to wherever we were going. I remembered thinking about having a good time with the two. At the same time, it had been on my mind a lot lately, though Caspian was not present yet. What a bummer. The brothers certainly did this deliberately. We can do all sorts of things, I purred, undoing a couple of his buttons. Meanwhile, he watched me darkly, not moving at all. The sorts of things we hadn't done yet, I whispered, slipping my leg over his torso and sitting up, straddling him. All the breath seemed to have left him as I placed my ass on the permanent bulge of his pants. He was hard, and his knot was tight to be released, exactly what I wanted. Not now, Lyra, he managed to speak. His voice came out pretty strained, but I wouldn't have it. I knew he wanted it too, and he was keeping up with this pretense because he thought I was still too weak to take his knot. I was going to prove him wrong tonight. Shoo. I placed a finger on his lips and dragged it down his chin and neck before unbuttoning the rest of his shirt. My wolf needs it. She has been bugging me about it a lot lately. It's torture having two mates and still not having one of their knots, I told him firmly. What about you? He asked, his eyes pitch black and his voice guttural. It was his wolf talking. Do you want my knot, Lyra? Or are you doing this just because your wolf's nagging you? I froze. That was a loaded question. One that could make or break things. My relationship with Marius was still somewhat rough and not as easy as it had been with Caspian, but I couldn't ignore my attraction towards him. Even though I had pushed him away in the past and said very nasty things to him, I had dreamed an awful lot of him, too, and wished that our past hadn't been so dark. That'd have made things so much easier for us. For me. After all, he was everything I had ever asked for, and so was his brother. A part of me was still bitter about the past, the same part that had driven me to do stupid things that had backfired. I now knew better than to rely on that bitter voice, the one that'd drive me to insanity if I kept listening to it. So now I listened to my wolf. She was my subconscious self, though more horny. Even though most of the time I didn't like what she wanted, I couldn't deny the fact that she wanted the best for me. She was a part of me after all. A part with the night's magic and the moon goddess's blessing. I hadn't listened to her in a while, constantly dismissing her as primal and unreasonable. But tonight, I decided to listen to her and let myself free of all the useless pretenses. I want your knot too, I whispered, grinding myself against his bulge. I need it or else I feel incomplete. Marius growled under me and flipped us around until I was the one under him. Are you sure about what you ask, Lyra? He asked, his voice rumbled darkly. Are you sure you want my knot? The man who killed your father? He asked. I froze under him. He searched my face, waiting. I drew in a breath as a wave of emotions hit me. That was a hard question, but I knew the answer deep down. It was yes, but I couldn't say it for some reason. Marius cocked an eyebrow at me. A knowing look flashed on his face. He clenched his jaw and rolled off me, sitting on the other side of the bed with his shoulders dropping with a pain-filled heaviness. A tear ran down my face as that bitter voice laughed at me so much for not listening to it. Maybe it was right. Maybe I shouldn't let it go as quickly. Perhaps I should continue to wreak havoc in their lives until there's nothing left of them. More and more angry tears streamed down my face until I could see no more. Until I could feel only one thing: madness. I hate you. I shouted at him, and just in time the door opened and Caspian walked in. 62, Lyra. I hate you. I roared, and right then Caspian walked into the hotel room. He froze as soon as he saw us, his eyes widening like a deer caught in the headlights. Don't you fucking leave. I threatened before he could even think about taking a step back. He looked between us before his jaw tightened, and he stepped inside, letting the door close behind him quietly. What's going on, Lyra? He asked, looking grim all of a sudden. You tell me what's going on. I growled, edging towards a meltdown. To say I was frustrated would have been an understatement. I wanted to rip my hair out. It had been going all right one moment, and then Marius had to ask me that stupid question, and I couldn't answer it even though I knew what I wanted. What are we doing here in the middle of nowhere? I demanded. A hint of puzzlement flashed in his eyes, and he looked past me, most likely exchanging a look with Marius. A look of understanding soon replaced the bewilderment. Another thing I hated was how the brothers could communicate just by looking at each other. It made me feel more excluded, as if I wasn't even supposed to be there. I blinked, angry tears glaring at Caspian. Lyra, he stated, edging closer to bed but not before looking past me at Marius. I was ready to leap at him and rip his face off if he did that again. Calm down. What happened between you two? Nothi. Before Marius could finish, I spoke over him. I asked for his knot, and he asked me a stupid question. I roared. I'd have laughed at my own words at another time, but I couldn't find the humor at that moment. My blood was burning with rage, and every breath filled me with frustration. I was about to burst if I didn't get what I wanted, and there was only one thing I wanted. No, I needed it like air. Their knots. Caspian opened his mouth to speak but closed it quickly, looking deeply baffled and awkward. What did you ask her? He asked Marius, his lips tight as if he was trying not to laugh. I gave him a threatening growl. I asked her if she wanted me or if it was her wolf. Marius answered behind me, sounding calm and patient, but his voice had an unmistakable edge. I asked her if she's okay fucking someone who killed her father. His words were followed by a tension so thick I could feel the air in the room turning solid. Caspian gave his brother a lingering look. We don't want you to do something you'd hate later, Lyra, Caspian told me grimly this time. I know the mate bond is getting stronger day by day, and it's demanding us to fulfill our mating, but that shouldn't take precedence over important issues that need to be resolved first. What's there to be resolved? I asked. Do you think the dead people will come back? Then something dawned upon me. What if they didn't want me because I was Giovanni's daughter? The realization almost shattered my heart. And that bitter voice laughed at me for even thinking that the brothers would accept me after knowing the truth. Fuck, I should have thought this through. This was unlike me to be so emotional with my thinking. In the past, I had always been rational and kept my emotions at bay, but ever since I met the brothers, my feelings have been all over the place, rusting away my rationality. The dead people aren't going to come back, Lyra, Caspian spoke, his voice solemn, and his eyes looked slightly unfocused as if he was playing a memory in his head. I knew he was thinking of his dead parents, especially his mother. The loss had affected him the most. But we don't want the dead to dictate our future, he stated firmly. Then tell me, does it matter to you that I'm Giovanni's daughter? I demand. No, the brothers answered together. We've said this before, and I'll say it again. You're not to blame for what Giovanni did. You didn't know anything. You were a child who got caught up in pack politics, Caspian added. Does it matter that my brother killed Giovanni? He asked next, his eyes heatedly trained on me. Behind me, I could feel Marius's scorching eyes burning on my back. This was my time to come clean. I had fucked it up previously, but now I can let it all out. I had to let it all out, or else it felt like I was churning poison inside me. I took a deep breath, turned, and sat against the bed's headboard. I wasn't facing any of them. I needed to get this out as simply and without any confusion. A lot depended on the words I was going to speak next. For a long time I wanted a closure. I kept looking and got none until I found out what had eventually happened to him. However, I hadn't learned the full truth then. I wanted to avenge his death, and that had been my motivation for everything I did against you two for all those years. All I wanted was to bring you two down anyhow. That was all that mattered to me for a long time until it became the ultimate goal of life. Then I found out you two are my mates. That was shocking. I couldn't take it, especially because I had asked the moon goddess for someone particular. You what Caspian interrupted, but I kept on going because I needed to get it off my chest all at once, or it felt like I'd ultimately lose the opportunity and mess it all up. I promised her I'd accept whoever she chose for me. I hadn't anticipated something like this. I went back on my word, and she punished me that day by delaying the explosion so that I got caught in it and lost an arm, which will always be a reminder to me of going back on my words. It also forced me to depend on you two in a way I had never depended on anyone. I had never been cared for or looked after, and this was jarring at first, but it made me even more aware of the things I had never had. I had craved something like this for so long, and finally I was getting it. But it scared me because I knew it'd all disappear once you two learned who I was. Then I learned the truth, and suddenly, it felt like my life was upside down and everything that I had known and believed was all false. I had one purpose in life and it vanished. I didn't know what to do with myself. It felt like my life had ended, and everything I had done so far had been useless. It's an unnerving feeling. I don't know what to do with myself anymore. I've been abandoned by people I loved and trusted in the past, and I've lost everything that ever mattered to me: my father, my life, my arm, years of my work. I trailed off as soon as I remembered the empty basement, the nothingness about that place that scared me. I've lost everything. I wailed. I don't want to lose anymore. I was in tears. I don't want to lose you too. I want my mates, I pleaded. 63. Marius. I don't want to lose anyone, she sniffed, tugging at my heart. I don't want to lose you too. I want my mates. I moved across the bed and pulled her in my arms before whispering in her ear. I'm sorry, Lyra. She wrapped her arms around my neck and buried her face in the crook of my neck, sniffing. I kissed her head while Caspian caressed her back, his eyes soft. You're not going to lose us, Lyra, Caspian assured her. We're going to be with you always. My brother is right, I told her. You're not going to get rid of us anytime soon. Caspian chuckled at my words, his eyes blazing with mischief. We'll follow you to hell if that's where you want to go, Caspian told her. But you're not getting rid of us anytime soon. You're ours now, and there's nothing that'll ever change it. We're going to take care of you so well, I whispered, teasing her with the tip of my nose. I felt her quiver at my words, making me yearn for her more. Yes, Caspian agreed, moving closer. We're going to give you everything you could ever ask for, he promised heatedly. I want you too, she whispered. I need you too. I need your knots, she spoke, sounding tortured. At the command of her words, my already swollen knot twitched, begging to be released from my pants and to be buried deep in her cunt. A hot jolt of need shot through my body, awakening my beast. I could see that Caspian was experiencing the same thing as I. So you'll have it, I promised, but you aren't. My words were interrupted by a fierce growl from Lyra. I want your knots tonight, she demanded. I don't need any more rest. I don't want to waste any more time. I need you too, please. She whimpered the last bit. I feel so empty, so numb with need that's all I could think of. My pussy cat, Caspian groaned, putting his fingers in her hair and gently tugging her back to press hot kisses over her shoulder. Lyra moaned, her smoldering eyes settled on my lips with a hunger that made me want to claim her right away. So be it, I growled as Caspian continued to set hot kisses on her neck and shoulder, making her quiver in my lap. I could start to scent the light hint of her arousal in the air, and it made my mouth water. I wanted to taste her so badly. You'll have our knots and marks tonight. I've waited for this so long, Caspian growled, gently biting the place where her neck met her shoulder, making her moan again. I took this moment to capture her lips and taste her finally. The heat that traveled through my body was making me crazier for her. I needed her then and there. Lyra whimpered against my lips, making my hunger worse. My chest vibrated with a thunderous growl before I laid her down and tore her pants and panties away until she was completely bare for me. Caspian did the same with her cute top and bra until there wasn't a thread of cloth left on her skin. Lyra gasped in surprise while Caspian chuckled at her startled reaction. Meanwhile, I didn't waste a second to between her legs and anchor her hips up before my lips landed on her folds. Lyra moaned out loud when I started lapping at her nub. I grunted, exploring her folds with my lips and loving the taste of her. My pussy cat, Caspian whispered to Lyra while gently kissing her and kneading her breasts, which were starting to swell back to their original glory. I reminded myself to taste them too. Look how my brother is eating you, Caspian purred between the hot kisses. He's going to devour you while I play with your beautiful tits. I teased her, flipping my tongue around her clit, drawing small circles around it while I put my middle and ring finger inside her cunt, slowly massaging away the rough spot at the top wall of her cunt. Her legs quivered around my head while Caspian kept playing with her tie-ties, saying dirty things to her. Look how well he's preparing you for our knots, pussy cat, Caspian whispered to her, his voice dark and sensual. So good, I couldn't help but groan myself. She's so needy. Her walls are clenching around my fingers hungrily. Fuck, Caspian growled. Your cunt is begging for us. It is, I groaned, taking my pants off while never taking my eyes off of her slick opening. Meanwhile, she watched me darkly with a primal hunger in her eyes, which lingered more around my knot. I grunted, stroking myself gently to spread her juices all over my knot. You've got to turn on your stomach for that, Caspian told her, slowly stroking her clit to maintain her steady pulse of need for my cock while she watched me hungrily. Turn on your stomach and put your ass up in the air and open up. Good girl, I told her as she did just as Caspian had asked her to. Yes, my sweet pussy cat, Caspian joined. Open up your cunt for my brother, and she did as she was told. So submissive and obeying. So vulnerable for me as she waited for my cock, and not with her ass up on the air. It was such a beautiful sight to behold. I climbed back on the bed, grabbing her hips and bringing her against me. She made a sound of surprise and need as I started to stroke the length of my cock against her slick opening. I had waited for this for so fucking long. I couldn't believe that I was finally going to give her my knot and claim her. Lyra, I groaned with need as I continued to lather her juices all over my cock. She whimpered impatiently. Ready to be fucked already. Patience, my pussy cat, Caspian told her, gently stroking her cheek. Let him take his time with you. It'll be easier for your cunt to take his knot. Gently, I sank the tip of my cock inside her. Her breath hitched and her body tensed. Caspian kept murmuring soft words of praise for her as she took me slowly, inch by inch, until my whole cock was buried inside her until my knot. It was purple with need and rested against her opening. Such a good pussy cat, taking the cock of her mate so beautifully. Caspian praised her while I felt her clench around my length, her walls protesting for being split by my greedy cock. Marius, she whimpered, squirming under me as I pulled my cock out and thrust it back inside her till my knot. I growled, my need for her intensifying as I started thrusting in her with a steady rhythm, trying to hold myself back from completely losing control. You look so beautiful taking my brother's cock, Caspian told her, kneading her tits while she moaned. So fucking beautiful, my pussy cat. My mate. Marius, she panted and moaned my name again and again, fueling my fire. I felt her walls clenching around me as I continued driving inside her. I need your knot. You need to come first, I told her while slowly increasing the rhythm of my thrusts. With each thrust, I tried to push my knot more and more against her slit, warning and preparing it for my knot. Please, she begged, her body quivering. Come for us first, pussy cat, Caspian urged her, reaching between her legs to stroke her clit while I continued fucking her. My knot was growing bigger in anticipation of being surrounded by her walls. Lyra whimpered, sounding on the edge. Yes, give us your pleasure, Caspian urged her as her pussy clenched around my cock mercilessly, and she cried out in pleasure. 64. Lyra, please, I begged for his knot. My body burned with an intense need for it. Even though I had his rod-hard cock forcing my walls apart, I needed more. It didn't help that I could feel the swell of his knot brushing against my entrance each time he thrust inside me, driving me mad with even more need. Come for us first, pussy cat, Caspian purred as he stroked away at my clit, making my walls clench around Marius's girth. It was unbearable for me. I was trembling as both the brothers placed with my body. Marius's thrusts grew hard and fast, the curve of his cock rubbing against one of my sensitive spots each time he drove inside me almost mercilessly. As Caspian continued to tease my clit, an intense wave of pleasure washed through me like a tsunami. I whimpered as my walls clenched desperately around Marius's monstrous cock, trying to force it out of my channel, But it wouldn't work because Marius held me in place, his cock hard and heavy, throbbing away in my pussy like it was there to stay. For the first time in a long time, my pussy could finally clench on something of its mate, making it happier than ever. Yes, give us your pleasure, Caspian whispered to me as my orgasm flooded my senses, making me scream until I was almost numb. Marius stopped thrusting into me for a second as my walls continued to clench around his cock almost painfully. I heard Marius growl behind me while I collapsed on my chest, my ass still high up in the air with his cock inside me. Good girl, Caspian praised me, setting hot kisses all over my jaw and brushing my hair out of my face. You're doing so good, he continued telling me while I could finally feel Marius trying to work his knot into my opening. I stilled, feeling the pressure increase. This was what I had been waiting for forever. I was finally going to take my mate's knot and feel full. My body started buzzing with a new anticipation, but I was slightly nervous. You're going to take it all, Caspian assured me, reading the uncertain look on my face. I stared into his dark eyes. He was still completely dressed, his knot hidden from me. I didn't like that. Take your clothes off, I told him, but he chuckled. I will soon, but you need to relax your cunt first, he told me, his voice as gentle and sultry as ever. The last thing I want to do is excite you when my brother is trying to put his knot in you. I groaned, but he was right. I tried to relax, closing my eyes for a few seconds while I felt Marius work with my cunt for it to open up wider for his knot. I drew a sharp breath when he pushed inside me abruptly, forcing half of his knot inside me at once. It's okay, Caspian assured me, you're doing amazing. Just relax and let it happen, pussy cat. Your cunt was made to take our knots. It's doing its job well, he told me. Are you alright? Marius asked, bending over me and caressing my cheek. His eyes were dark with lust and adoration as he looked at me. His hair was plastered to his forehead, and he looked flushed. So handsome and perfect. The fact that my pussy finally had his cock, and almost half of his knot inside it satisfied me to a great extent. Yes, I whispered, I want all of it, I told him, sounding breathless but not stated yet. My words darkened the look in his eyes until it felt like I was staring at two abysses. Such a good girl, he groaned, setting hot kisses all over my back while I felt held of his knot pulse angrily at my entrance. I wiggled gently, reminding him to finish what he started, but he seemed to take his time with his kisses. I feel so lucky to give you my knot, baby girl, I froze at his words. Baby girl. He had called me that in my dream. Goosebumps pricked my skin with the realization. Listen to my brother, pussy cat, Caspian whispered at me, his hot breath fanning my neck. He has yearned for you so much. You'll not deny him anymore. Your cunt now belongs to him as much as it does to me, and you shall always open it up for his cock and not forever. Promise us, Lyra, Caspian demanded. Guilt filled my chest for having treated Marius so terribly in the past. I promise, I whimpered, biting back at the guilt. Say it, Marius demanded this time, not giving me all his knot yet. I knew that I owed this to him. My cunt belongs to you too to take whenever and however you want, I spoke, trembling with need. It felt like I would burst with need if I didn't get to clench around Marius's knot soon enough. From tonight, your cunt is ours to use and breed, Marius growled. We'll take it whenever we want, and you'll bear yourself to us on demand, Caspian added. Yes, I quivered. Please, Marius. My baby girl looks so beautiful begging for my knot, Marius whispered. My knot only belongs to you, and you can have it whenever you want. I want it now, I demanded. The brothers chuckled together. So impatient for my knot, Marius groaned, finally slipping the rest of his knot inside me with another thrust. I moaned out loud, feeling so full. I had never felt so full before, and immediately, this feeling of fullness sent another orgasm rushing through my body. Your cunt looks so beautiful with my brother's knot inside it, Caspian told me while still flicking my clit, extending my orgasm. Marius growled above me as he came inside me, emptying all the seed in his knot in my womb. But as soon as he did that, a new wave of fresh seed filled his knot instantly, ready to flood my womb. His knot felt so tight in my cunt, my walls around him hard, continuing to milk his knot until it could not store the rest of his seed, letting it spill out from the point of our connection. Marius collapsed with me on the side, his knot still pulsing away angrily, not ready to release me yet. Not that I didn't mind. Instead, I felt momentarily sated as I felt his seed trickle down my pussy. The two of us lay on our sides while catching our breaths. My baby girl, Marius muttered, placing hot kisses all over my neck while I watched Caspian undress before me, his eyes darker than the void, ready to swallow me. I watched hungrily as he set his throbbing cock free from his pants. His knot was swollen as well, almost purple with need. A bead of his seed appeared at the tip of his cock, making me thirsty for him. 65. Caspian. She watched me hungrily as I took my clothes off. Even though my brother had fucked her, and she still had his knot pulsing away in her cunt, the hunger in her eyes didn't lessen. She looked more hungry for us now, and it made my cock throb painfully hard. I watched her like a predator. Seeing her with my brother's knot made me yearn for her even more. I loved seeing them together after such a long time, finally connected as one. It was a sight to behold, and I was already looking forward to seeing them together more. Finally felt like we had united. The issue between Marius and Lyra finally seemed to have been solved. Even though I always maintained a cordial relationship with him, I could tell that the tension between them was slowly starting to bleed into our fraternal relationship. She finally caved in for him before it could turn into something worse, especially something stemming from jealousy. Marius was kissing her neck as I slowly climbed on the bed, my eyes only on Lyra watching me like a hawk. Her eyes set fiercely on my cock and the pre-cum dripping off of it. So beautiful, I whispered to her, my pussy cat. So needy for me even with my brother's knot in her cunt. She smiled at me devilishly before reaching out to touch my hardness. That's mine, she claimed. I chuckled darkly. Of course, I told her, stroking her cheek while looking deep into her eyes. My knot is only yours, I told her, and immediately saw the bolt of possessiveness flash through her eyes. I didn't think my knot could feel any tighter, but it did as she looked at me as if she wanted to devour me whole. At that moment I couldn't help but unite our lips to kiss her fiercely. She welcomed my kiss as if she had been waiting for it, craving for it all this time. She parted her luscious lips, welcoming my branding tongue so I could claim her mouth. She moaned when our tongues united, fighting for control. I gave it to her momentarily but forced her soon after. She made an approving noise, giving everything to me. She gasped for breath, looking completely flushed when I finally let her go. Her eyes were pitch black as she looked at me, her fingers wrapped around my throbbing cock, stroking it gently and slowly, edging toward the knot that was about to burst with my seed. So full, she sighed, stroking my knot. I groaned, wanting to sink into her already, but my brother's knot hadn't released her yet. I almost lost it when she licked her lips, her eyes hungrily set on my cock. Take him in your mouth, Marius encouraged her, kneading her breasts. She whimpered in agreement as I moved closer. Good girl, Marius praised her as Lyra closed her lips around the tip of my cock and I almost came. She purred, licking the beads of pre-cum that leaked from my tip. I felt weak as I watched her lick my cock, tracing each throbbing vein while she reached between my legs and gently cupped my balls, heavy with my seed and begging to be drained. Seeing the tortured look on my face, she gave me a smug look. She knew what she was doing to me, making me want her more. Look at his knot. It's too painful for him. Let him fuck your mouth, baby girl, Marius told her, nibbling her ear, and she shuddered. Would that make me a good girl, taking both of your cocks together? She asked, her voice low and sultry. Yes, both of us growled together. And what would I get in return? She asked, her eyes gleaming with mischief. I'll make you come so hard that your eyes roll back in your head, and you're left moaning our names, Marius growled darkly, reaching between her legs to stroke her clit, and immediately Lyra quivered under his touch. So weak and needy for us, I growled, getting looser and rubbing the tip of my cock on her cheek, slathering some of my cum there. Yes, so needy, her walls are still clenched around my knot, milking all my seed greedily, Marius agreed, stroking her clit. Please, Lyra whimpered. Let my brother fuck your mouth like a good girl, Marius told her, holding her on the edge, milk his knot, take his ache away. Yes, she breathed, wrapping her fingers around my knot, and I thrust my cock past her lips, not stopping until my tip was pressed against the back of her throat. She choked a bit but held it there, especially when Marius threatened to take his fingers off her swollen and needy clit. Yes, hold it there and feel him throb in your throat. Feel his need for you, baby girl. My chest vibrated with a thunderous growl as I held her head and started driving in and out past her lips. Meanwhile, she held on to my hips firmly, her tongue stroking the curve of my cock, making me fucking her mouth harder, driving deeper and deeper until she could take me no more and my knot was pressed tightly against her lips. I came hard, my cock sending thick ribbons of my hot seed down her throat, and she swallowed it all without a single complaint. I couldn't get more obsessed with her. Such a good girl, Marius praised her, his eyes filled with awe and desire. She takes my cock in her mouth so well, I groaned, no gag reflex. She's heaven sent. She gasped for breath, heaving hard when I pulled my cock out of her throat and mouth. Her eyelids were heavy with lust as she stared at me, completely wasted. I smiled devilishly at her. That's why she deserves to only come on our knots, Marius said, stroking her clit harder until she cried out with pleasure, coming hard until her eyes rolled back and he quivered. Her pussy clenched so hard around my brother's knot that it pushed him out, draining away all the excess cum and making space for me. Marius, she moaned, collapsing back as my brother moved and I took his place. Caspian, she sighed as I hooked her leg up and stroked my tip against her entrance. Yes, pussycat. It's my turn to use your cunt now, I said, teasing her by only inserting my tip and then taking it out. She groaned, making Marius chuckle as he cleaned her face with a damp towel. So greedy for us, he commented darkly, you know the word, baby girl. Say it, and my brother will give you his knot, please, she pleased, my cunt feels empty. I can't bear it. I need your knot. I was planning on playing with her more, but her words made me slam my hips and drive my cock and knot both inside her. We both cried out in pleasure simultaneously, and Marius made a sound of approval, taking 2 knots back to back. She is definitely made for us, Marius commented. I cannot agree more, brother, I groaned, feeling her walls clench around me ferociously. 66. Lyra. I was a puddle as Caspian fucked my cunt like an animal in heat. He drove his knot in and out of me, the friction from it already pushing me towards another mind-numbing orgasm. I whimpered, doubting if I could take it this time. It was all too much for me, but at the same time I had been wanting this for a long time, and I didn't regret one bit of it. This was necessary for me and them. Here, suck my thumb, Marius whispered darkly, thrusting his thumb past my lips. I didn't have to be told twice because I sucked hard at it, feeling my body shake in anticipation of the orgasm. Caspian growled behind me and slammed his knot into my cunt with a rough thrust. My legs shook while Caspian's knot inflated with more seed, locking us together. Feeling his knot pulse inside me instantly made me come. My walls clenched hard around him while I shook with the force of the orgasm. Caspian growled, emptying his seed in his knot in my womb just like his brother had done a few moments ago. I had both of their seeds swimming in my womb, waiting to take root. The thought deeply pleased me, making me relax as the effect of the intense orgasm almost made me feel numb. Caspian and I were breathing hard while his knot continued to pulse away inside me. Not yet done. That's it. You did very well, baby girl, Marius told me, wiping my body with a wet towel, but all I could do was stare at his still hard cock and his knot. His knot looked less painful now, but still I wanted to reach out and stroke him. He chuckled as if reading my thoughts. This is enough for you tonight, he told me, caressing my cheek. You need to rest now. His voice was so soothing and gentle that I could fall asleep to that each night. I sighed deeply as he gently ran the wet towel over my breasts and down to my stomach. Caspian was still inside me, kissing my neck. Fuck. She feels so good, he groaned behind me, making me feel even more satisfied than ever. Even though I didn't want the night to end, I was already feeling dog-tired. My eyelids felt heavy with exhaustion, ready to flutter shut. I loved it, I whispered before slowly falling asleep with Caspian's knot still inside me. The next day, I woke up with a terrible ache between my legs. It made me groan whenever I moved. Hey, Marius was beside me again. I cracked my eyes open to see sunlight streaming into our suite. Today was unnaturally sunny for a city always shrouded by dark clouds. Marius, I sighed deeply as he appeared before me. He looked fresh and delicious, reminding me of last night. He gave me a bright smile before kissing my head. How much does it hurt? He asked me, a hint of concern in his voice. But before I could answer, I looked around, searching for Caspian. I've sent him out to look at some stuff, Marius told me, reading my thoughts. Where does it hurt, Lyra? Tell me, he demanded. It hurts down there, I told him, and he nodded as if he had been expecting the answer. I'll take care of that. Where else? He pressed. Does your head hurt? No, just there, I answered, slowly slipping up and flexing my neck from side to ease my muscles. I feel much better besides that, I added. It was true. Even though I had taken not 1 but 2 knots last night, I felt better than I had ever felt after waking up without an arm. Even my wolf felt content and happy, and wasn't busy spending her energy to heal me. Marius nodded. You look better too, he remarked. The bond is working well, you think so? I asked coyly. Yes, it's working really well, he answered darkly, pulling me into his arms. I realized I was still naked under the sheets, but he didn't seem to care at all. I sighed deeply in his arms, feeling peaceful. Caspian's presence would have made it better, but I could always seduce him later. I can feel your contentment in your ache, he added, kissing my neck. I closed my eyes and enjoyed the feel of his lips on my skin. That feels so good, Marius, but I want to shower, I told him. I'll help you shower, he said quickly. You look like you've already showered, I noted. I don't mind a second or a third, he returned slyly, cupping me in his arms and taking me to the bathroom. You're not so grumpy today, I snorted as he set me on the counter beside the sink and started preparing the shower. You know why, he said, turning to me and slowly removing his clothes. My eyes went straight to his cock to find it erect and his knot tight again. It's okay. It'll be like that until we're all marked, Marius said before I could ask him about it. I can bear it. Now come, he extended his hand for me and I took it. The water was warm as I stood under it. Having Marius with me in the shower felt crowded, but I didn't mind, mainly due to how he looked at me and his soft, caressing touches as he cleaned me. He was extra gentle while cleaning between my legs. I have something to ease that when we step out of the shower, he assured me, noting the redness there. I rubbed soap on his chest as he did my hair. It was a quiet and cozy shower, and I loved it until I remembered why we were there in the first place. The empty basement. All my servers gone. Lyra, Marius called for me. It's all right. Caspian's out there looking through the place to find what happened. Marius assured me as if reading my thoughts. I can't, it's okay. We'll find out, he assured me grimly this time. But you need to stop hyperventilating. It's not going to help. Well, he was right, but at the same time I couldn't help but keep thinking about it while we showered together. Marius kissed me heatedly before finishing the shower to bring me back to the present. Spread your legs wider, Marius commanded after the shower when I was seated on the bed, and he was between my legs with the ointment for the ache. I tried not to laugh as I spread my legs most sensually, and instantly, his eyes darkened. He gave a warning growl before I could reach out and do something to tease me. You might play with me, but it won't work, baby girl. I will never fuck you when you're aching, he said, gently applying the ointment over the redness. Immediately it made my skin feel cool and I sighed. I watched as he carefully worked between my legs. I couldn't help but notice how my breasts looked more swollen, especially my thighs. Even my hair was long enough to cascade over my shoulder. I was starting to regain my old body, making me feel even more content. 67, Lyra. I couldn't help but keep thinking about my missing servers while I had breakfast with Marius. Caspian was still nowhere to be seen, making me somewhat impatient. I tried asking Marius more about what his brother was up to, but he wouldn't answer me. You don't understand, I tried to tell Marius. Yes, I was starting to hyperventilate again, but I had a good enough reason to do it. My servers had a lot of sensitive information, and whoever had it was out there misusing it while I sat here doing nothing and completely clueless. We don't have much time. We need to find whoever did this soon, or else there will be big trouble, I told him, hoping he'd feel the same intensity of urgency, but he looked calm. We're looking at it, Lyra, he assured me. You don't have to stress yourself out. I have good reasons to, I groaned. Before I could lose my mind, Caspian was finally back, and it felt like I could breathe again. I was so glad to see him that I could have thrown myself in his arms and kissed the daylights out of him. It didn't help how his eyes gleamed with the darkest desires as he looked at me, reminding me of our hot session last night. Speaking of the devil, Marius muttered, looking unhappy. I wondered if it was because our one-on-one time was interrupted, but the look the brothers exchanged between themselves told me that something entirely different was going on of which I wasn't aware. What is it? I demanded, crossing my arms over my chest and eyeing the brothers. Tell me. I cannot stand you two having conversations just by looking at each other, I accused them. I need to know, I forced when Caspian glanced at Marius again as if silently asking for permission. He's going to tell me what he found, and you're not going to stop him, I told Marius fiercely, sternly jabbing my finger in his chest. He regarded me for a few seconds, contemplating something silently. Promise me you won't hyperventilate again and pass out, he demanded. You almost gave us a stroke yesterday. I won't, I declared fiercely, even though I was doubtful about it. Nonetheless, I needed to know. And it's not like you could just continue to keep it from me. I'll figure it out either way, and I need to know. We don't have much time on our hands. Marius sighed because I was right, and he couldn't counter my strong defense. While looking through the house, I found a note. Caspian finally spoke. It's cryptic, he added, reaching inside his pocket and taking it out before holding it before me. I wasted no second to leap forward and grab it before reading it. It was a long binary code. Nothing else. I stared at it for a moment, trying to decipher it in my head, but it didn't make any sense at first. The binary code could be deciphered into alphabets. What is it? Marius asked me, his eyes focused on my face while I tried to think of all the models to solve binary codes. I frowned when nothing came up. It's code, I answered. I don't know what it means. I've had one of our cryptologists look at it, Caspian informed me, but I was sure a cryptographer wouldn't be able to solve it. Whatever the code was, it had a personal message. Where did you find the note? I asked. On the empty floor of the basement, Caspian replied. No fingerprints or anything on it. Just the paper inked with the code, he continued to tell me as I flipped the paper back and forth to find something on it. But there wasn't anything. It was plain and it just had the code written on it. I even held it up in the sunlight to see if it had any unique texture or engravings, but nothing. I continued checking it while the brothers silently watched me, thinking about the code. Do you know anyone who was aware of your server's locations? Marius asked after a while. No, only I know about the locations where I store my servers, I frowned, gently bending the paper to see if something would appear. But nope. But nothing. It was a paper with the code inked on it, as Caspian had said previously. I read the code again and memorized it. Still, did you know anyone who could locate your servers? Any old alliances with whom things might have gone sour? Anyone to whom you might have accidentally revealed their location? Or anyone as skilled as you? Marius asked, deep in thought. I tried to think of the answers to his questions. I didn't make many alliances for my work because I preferred to work alone, and the ones I had previously were cordial. Nothing terrible happened with them that'd lead them to come after me. I was always careful with everything, so there was never a chance of having a slip in who could be as skilled as me. That was a hard one. I was the best hacker out there. I knew my shit very well and people knew me for it. Sure, there were many others, but they weren't as sharp as me. Not as sharp that they'd fuck me up like this, but again the servers were not there. Someone had found a crack somewhere and slipped through there. However, I couldn't think about it. I cannot think of anyone like that. I do have some rivals, but they aren't as powerful or as stupid to do something like this, I said while I went through the names. And you took out the guys who had some idea about me. That's true, but there's got to be someone out there. I'm not doubting your capabilities, Lyra. But no matter what, there's always someone out there lurking in the shadows and waiting for the right opportunity. Someone maybe you might not even know, Marius stated, and his words sent a shiver down my spine. What he claimed was worse. Not knowing anything about your enemy was a defeat, making me even more restless. I was always used to having the upper hand, but now the tables had turned and I didn't know anything. All I had was that code. It was the only hint. Is it possible to fear someone you don't know? I asked. Very much, Caspian answered. Then we might be in big trouble, I said. If you're captivated by Lyra's story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can get the latest content first.